This is the first lecture for CFA Level 1. Today we will discuss the ethics and professional standards. Ethical and professional standards, we will discuss what are the ethics which CFA Institute requires from their members. And starting with, every business should have ethics. Ethics is something that we learn from the home. And same way, when we do the business, we should have ethical practices which is good for you and for the client, and you have responsibility as CFA members to obey with the code of conduct and the practices that they are being issued by the CFA Institute. Now, we will start Institute Code of Ethics, CFA Institute of Code of Ethics and Standard of Professional Conduct, governed by CFA Institute bylaws and the rules of procedure for proceeding related to the professional conduct. These are all conducts are based on the fairness of the principle of fairness and maintaining the confidentiality of the proceedings. What is the overall responsibility is the Disciplinary Review Committee of the CFA Institute Board of Governors has overall responsibility for the professional conduct program and enforcement of the code and standards. So Disciplinary Review Committee is the major committee which is focused on maintaining the discipline for the members. Now, how inquiries are conducted? The CFA Institute is a designated officer through the professional conduct staff conduct an inquiry related to the professional conduct. Now, circumstances that originate an inquiry against this committee is self-disclosure. If some member comes and he or she disclose something in front of the committee, then surely it will lead to an inquiry. Written complaints might come from the other sources against the members, or through some public resources and magazine you get some information that member is involved in some misconduct activities, and report by a CFA exam proctor of a possible violation during the exam. These are categories will automatically lead to some inquiry against a CFA member. Now, how the complaints it's dealt, what is the procedure for CFA to deal with these inquiries? Professional conduct staff may require in writing an explanation from the subject matter or a candidate, and may interview the subject member and candidate, interview the complainant and other parties, collect documents and record relevant observations. Now, what could be the possible decisions out of these inquiries and these procedures? No disciplinary sections are appropriate if they feel that this case is not so strict to have some rules. So no disciplinary sanctions are appropriate. Then they sometimes, if they believe, they can issue a warning, cautionary letter, and sometimes discipline the member of the candidate, depend upon the circumstances and the situation of the case itself. Now, what are the rights of defendant? If someone is being alleged for some disciplinary activities, what are the rights of the defendants? May accept or reject the sanctions here. And if the member or candidate reject the sanction, the matter will be referred to the panel of CFA Institute members. What can be the possible sanctions? Sanction imposed may include condemnation by the member or member's peer, suspension of the candidate, continued participation in the CFA program. So these are two sanctions which you should keep in mind. It is very important to note that CFA does not impose any penalty in terms of fine. Now, there are 6 components of the Code of Ethics which we have to keep in mind being a member of CFA Institute. Act with integrity, competence, diligence, respect, and in ethical way. Being a professional, these 6 components should be the part of your personality. when you deal with some client or you are providing some services, these category characteristics should be built in because it will enhance the reputation of the institute, and everything is dependent on these ethics. So place the integrity of the investment professionals and the interest of the client above all your personal interest, and you should avoid conflict of interest to enhance your reputation in the real world. Use reasonable care and exercise independent professional judgments. Practice and encourage others to practice in a professional and ethical way. So it's sort of you do good and you promote others towards this one. Promote the integrity and uphold the rules governing capital markets. You should know, you should have a sound knowledge of the local laws and the regulations and directives issued time to time. Maintain and improve their professional competence and strive to maintain and improve the competence of the investment professionals. These 6 components are very important to keep in mind. Now, the standards of the professional conduct. Now, these are the standards which one by one we are going to discuss in detail. The first one is professionalism. What is professionalism by definition, and how a CFA member should show its professionalism. Integrity of the capital markets. Duties to the clients. What duties you are supposed to have towards clients and your employees, and then investment analysis. What are your responsibility when you are going to analyze some investment, because being a CFA, your opinion and your analysis create a massive, it's intensive impact on the market itself. So your words are very precious, and your words should be based by following your professionalism, your prudence. You should keep a confidentiality, and your client is always key for you, and you should give a reasonable and very effective advice to them. And then you should avoid the conflict of interest and responsibility as a CFA institute member or CFA chartered CFA candidate. These are some standard of professional conduct which we are going to discuss in detail. Starting from, before I start the individual discussion, surely for passing your CFA exam, there are some tips that you have to keep in mind, which is don't concentrate on memorizing the standards. It's not prudent to try to memorize. It's in fact, you should have the ability, when you read the case is given to you, you should know which standard this case is relevant to. And once you identify what would be the possible solution for that one. This should be the emphasis for passing your CFA exam level 1. Now, practical question mostly required your common sense to be used, and you should know which standard is violated. Mostly the question are in the form of the case study rather than a state question. So by doing the question bank with us, you will develop yourself to analyze how to read the case, how to analyze, and how to analyze which standard is being involved and what is the violation and how we can respond to it. Starting our discussion, the first part is professionalism, knowledge of the law. Member and candidates must understand, first of all. Secondly, they should comply also with all applicable laws, rules and regulations, including the CFA Institute Code of Conduct, Code of Ethics and Standard of Professional Conduct. We will discuss so many cases which will make this point very clear. And in the event of conflict, comply with more strict law and regulation. Then must not knowingly participate or assist in any activity, must disassociate from any violation in any case, and such laws, rules and regulations. Now, what are the guidance we have for code and standard versus local law? adherence to more strict law, your local laws. You should know in deep, and you should suggest accordingly. Guidance, participation, or association with violation by others. Immediately, if something brings in your knowledge, so immediately you should disassociate yourself from that activities. Even in the worst cases, you can leave the employer as well. And how to deal with such situation? First, a member may confront the involved individual. He must approach his immediate supervisor or compliance department. Think of leaving the employer in the extreme cases. Inaction with continued association may be constructed as knowing participation. Now, there's an example. What we just discussed, we will apply through a case, because our main objective is to develop ourselves how to identify in a case which standard is involved and how to analyze. Now, this is an example. Michael works for a brokerage company and is responsible for an underwriting of the securities. Now, a company official gave Alan information indicating that the financial statements Alan filed with the regular overstate the issuer's earnings. So here this word overstate is an alarm. It's creating an alarm with us because it's not the right practice. Now, Alan seek the advice of the brokerage firm's general counsel, who state that it would be difficult for the regulator to prove that Alan has involved any wrongdoings. So apparently, if you read this case, you will find something unethical in this one. So what are the comments? Let me read this for you. Although it is recommended that the members and candidates seek the advice of a legal counsel, the reliance on such advice does not absolve a member or candidate from the requirement to comply with the law or regulations. So Alan should report this situation to his supervisor and seek an independent legal opinion and determine whether the regulator should be notified of the error or not. So immediately, as we discussed in our last slide here, that how to deal with this situation, it is written here. First, a member may confront the individual and he must approach his supervisor, or he should discuss with some independent legal counselor. And in the extreme case, of course, you can think about how to leave your employer. Then, leading towards another example, an employer of an investment bank is working on an underwriting and find out the issuer has altered some financial statements to hide operating losses in one division. So if you apparently see through your common sense, this is an alarming situation which clearly tells us that this is an unethical practice. These misstated data are included in a preliminary prospectus that has already been released. Now, what are the comments? Employee should report the problem to his supervisor. This is what we learned, how to deal with such situation. If the firm does not get the misstatement fixed, the employee should disassociate from the underwriting and further seek legal advice about whether he should undertake additional reporting or any other action.